Oh friend, let me ask you something real. You ever walk into a room and feel it hit you like a wave? No words spoken. No eyes on you yet. And still? Something's off. Something's heavy in the air, and your heart picks it up before your mind can make sense of it. That's no accident. That's not paranoia. That's a soul that's been carved by fire. By grief, by betrayal, by life itself. A soul that knows how to hear what hasn't been said. Some hearts were built to feel what others won't even admit. We call them empaths. But I want to talk about something deeper, rarer, stronger. I'm talking about the sacred few, who don't just sense storms, but stand right in the middle of them, who don't crumble when the winds of someone else's chaos blow through. No, these souls hold steady. They don't just feel pain. They understand it, and more than that, they can carry it without drowning in it. Some folks call them super empaths. I call them super souls. And when a super soul crosses paths with a narcissist, my God, something shakes. Because the narcissist doesn't see a heart. They see a tool. They see someone kind and think, here's someone I can use. They see forgiveness and think, I've got another chance to manipulate. They don't see a person, they see supply. A well to drain, a mirror to admire themselves in. At first, it works, because the super soul, they're wired for mercy. They believe in people, they want to rescue, to lift, to redeem. But listen to me closely. There's a limit to even the softest heart. A super soul doesn't just pour out love blindly, they watch, they listen. They start to notice the mask slipping, the apologies that sound right but never match the actions, the affection that only comes when control is slipping. They begin to see the truth. This isn't a wounded soul seeking healing. This is a person hiding behind charm, behind blame, behind a costume made of ego so fragile, it shatters at the slightest touch of truth. And that's when the miracle starts. The super soul stops chasing, stops explaining, stops apologizing for simply existing, and instead, they reflect. Not a duration, but a mirror made of truth, not loud, not cruel, just clear. And to someone who's built their entire existence on pretending, truth feels like fire. Because let me tell you something the narcissist never learned to do. Sit in the truth, they perform, they extract. But when someone stops reacting, when someone refuses to bend, when someone holds up a mirror and says, this is who you really are. Not the charming genius, not the victim of the world, but a scared soul obsessed with control. That's when panic hits. That's when the rage and blame come flooding in. Not because they were abandoned, but because they were seen. And oh, what a holy shift that is. This story isn't about the narcissist unraveling. This story is about the super soul rising. Not with drama, not with revenge, but with something more powerful than both clarity. A sacred kind of knowing that whispers, I don't have to stay. I don't belong in this cycle. I was never made to shrink for someone else's ego. And when that moment comes, when the supersoul stands up and walks out, not in anger, but in truth, something breaks. The narcissist loses their illusion. Because what they feared most just happened. Someone saw them, and left anyway. Now let me speak right to your heart. If you've ever been told you're too much, too soft, too emotional, I need you to hear this. You are a rare and sacred gift. You feel deeply, you love fully, and yes, you walk away when truth demands it. Not because you stopped loving, but because you finally started loving yourself, too. And that kind of walk, that's not weakness, that's power. That's a holy revolution. That's you saying, I will not be twisted. I will not be used. And I was born for more than this. And when you leave, not out of hate but out of truth, you don't just walk out. You break the spell. You declare, with every step, I am free. But here's the H I know too well. Sometimes the supersoul stays, not out of ignorance, not because they're weak, but because deep in that wide, they merciful heart lives a sacred belief. Maybe if I just love them enough they'll change. And I'm not here to shame that hope. That kind of hope is rooted in something holy. But friend, hear me. No amount of love can heal someone who has decided to stay hidden in their brokenness. You could pour out everything in you, and it still won't fill the heart of someone who refuses to be honest with themselves. Because the narcissist doesn't crave healing. They crave worship, not to be held, but to be obeyed. And the longer that sacred soul stays, the more they start to vanish. They begin to question their worth, like they apologize for needing anything at all. They turn into fog inside their own life, and that is not love. That is erosion. But here's the beauty of the human soul, it can still hear truth. Sometimes it starts as a whisper. Just a flicker. This isn't love. And that flicker grows, it builds, until one day the soul says, enough. Not with fire, not with rage, but with resolve. And that They, my friend, is where healing begins. Not because the narcissist changed, but because the empath saw. Once you see, you can't unsee. And that's where your power lies. Not in how loud you yell, but in the quiet courage to walk away and not look back. Because this journey, this tangle of hope and harm, isn't just emotional, it's spiritual, it's a furnace. And from the ashes, the questions rise. Who am I? What do I deserve? What will I no longer carry? Let that be the beginning of your freedom. Let that be your resurrection. Let me speak straight into your spirit now. Love should never cost you your clarity. If it does, that's not love. It's a trap. And I don't care how pretty the cage looks, how sweet the words sound, or how long you've stayed. Bondage wrapped in affection is still a prison. You weren't born to live behind bars, even if those bars are made of roses and half-whispered apologies. And then in that quiet place, that sacred stillness where the soul finally stops spinning, the supersoul begins to stir. Not from bitterness, not from rage, but from something deeper. Truth. Not the truth shouted from rooftops, but the kind that shows up in whispers over the years. 1,000 tiny slices. A smile that didn't feel safe. A compliment that came with a price. A boundary crossed like it was never there to begin with. They held it together with hope, with grit, with the holy belief that loving harder would finally make it right. But there comes a day, a breath, a sacred pause when the soul speaks. Wait. Why do I believe I have to carry all of this? That question. That's the doorway. That's the shaking of the ground beneath a lie. That's the moment identity starts to rebuild, not out of who they were told to be, but out of who they truly are. And believe me, the narcissist feels it, not just in words, but in energy. Something changes. The usual dance starts slipping out of rhythm. The supersoul stops explaining, stops defending, stops chasing the need to be seen, to be validated, to be understood. It dissolves, and in its place, a quiet strength begins to rise. The narcissist. They panic. Oh, they'll try every card they've got. The guilt trips. The tears. The manipulations wrapped in charm. The promises that once melted defenses. But now, they sound like static because the illusion has already cracked, and the soul can't unsee what it's seen. Now, don't you dare skip this next part. There is grief. The supersoul doesn't just mourn a person. They mourn a dream. A dream stitched together with patience and prayer, with soft words and second chances. The dream that if they stayed soft long enough, the narcissist would soften too. But that dream dies. And though it's painful, there's something holy about that death. Because from the ashes of that false hope, something true begins to bloom. And truth, my friend, is what freedom feeds on. What most folks miss is this: when the supersoul walks away, they don't just leave. They rise. They rise one piece at a time, sometimes silently, sometimes trembling. But with every step, they come back to life. No longer a caretaker, but a creator. They no longer a hostage, but a healer. If you're standing at that edge right now, hearing that voice inside you whisper, "This isn't right. I want more. I deserve more," listen to me. That voice is sacred. That voice is you. Uncloaked, unafraid, unbound. And yes, awareness hurts, but it also heals. It clears the fog. And when the supersoul chooses truth over fantasy, chooses self over sacrifice, that choice breaks chains. Not just for them, but for every soul watching, every child listening, every heart learning what love really looks like. Let me say this with fire in my bones. Walking away is not a failure. It's not betrayal. It is the most sacred act of liberation. It is a living prayer that says, I choose life. I choose peace. I choose me. And the narcissist. They don't shatter because they were left. They shatter because they lost the script. Because when that light, your light, walks out the door, they're left staring into a mirror they've spent their whole life avoiding. And oh, that's stillness. That's not silence. That's thunder. That's the sound of power shifting. That's the sacred hush that follows every great awakening. Because when the supersoul walks away, they don't scream. They don't rage. They don't beg. They reclaim. And what they say without saying is this: I was never here out of weakness. I was never yours out of fear. I gave 'cause I chose to. And now, I choose to go. And that right there, that's what terrifies the narcissist more than anything. Not the absence. The exposure. Because when the game ends, when the mask falls, when the audience is gone, they are left alone with themselves. And let me tell you, there is no greater reckoning than that. Because when the supersoul withdraws, it's not just about leaving, it's about returning. Returning to the light. Returning to truth. Returning to the sacred center of their own story. That goodbye, it's not just a farewell, it's a declaration. You are not entitled to me. You are not owed my grace. I am not here to heal what you refuse to touch. Right there. Right in that moment, the entire fantasy the narcissist has been spinning begins to crack. Because here's what they don't want you to know: their world runs on emotional electricity. And you were the power plant. Your effort, your presence, your forgiveness, that was their fuel. And when you unplug, when you stop dancing to the music they play, the lights go out, the performance ends, the stage grows cold, and suddenly, they have to face what's been there all along: a hollow act, with no audience left to applaud. Let's make this clear: narcissists don't unravel from confrontation, they unravel from absence. From the holy hush of, "I'm done." From the moment the supersoul no longer tries to fix the storm, but simply steps out of it. Because that stillness, it speaks, it says, "I'm done explaining confusion, I'm done bleeding to prove my worth, I'm done shrinking for someone else's comfort." And in that silence, something sacred unfolds. For the first time, maybe ever, the narcissist is left alone with the one thing they've avoided their entire life: their reflection. And what they see, it's not glorious, it's not adored, it's not grand, it's empty. That's not punishment, that's reality. And the supersoul, they don't look back, because what they're walking into is too precious to miss. Clarity, sanity, wholeness, the things that were quietly taken, one compromise at a time, now begin to return, not through vengeance, not through validation, through selfhood. You want to talk about transformation? This is it, that's sacred. A seismic shift when the supersoul stops waiting for the narcissist to wake up, because they did. They stop begging for someone else to change and start becoming the change. They stop performing, and they start being. And that, my friend, that's not just recovery, that's resurrection. What's left behind when the supersoul finally walks away isn't just a person. It's a vacuum, a hollow stage where once there was music, there's now only the echo of control lost. And make no mistake, that echo is loud. See, the narcissist doesn't just lose a partner, they lose a system, a setup, a finely tuned machine that ran on emotional fuel. Yours, you were the mirror, the balm, the buffer. You carried what they couldn't admit, you bore what they refused to face. And now that you're gone, they scramble, they deny, they spin new tales. Sometimes they replace you in a flash, parading the next performance like proof they're still in control. But it never fits. Because what they crave isn't love, it's leverage. What they lost wasn't you, it was access. And when control slips through the fingers of someone who made it their god, what follows isn't reflection, it's collapse. Some will rage, some will weep behind curtains drawn, some will slide new masks over the old ones and pretend the mirror's not cracked. But all of it is just the sound of someone being left with the only person they can't bend to their will: themselves. But this last word, it isn't for them. It's for you. You didn't ruin anything. You didn't break them. You simply stopped agreeing to the lie. And in that refusal, you told the truth. The loudest, clearest, most liberating truth you've ever known. I am not responsible for mending what chooses to stay broken. I am not here to vanish so someone else can feel full. I will not remain in a place where I'm unseen. And that moment, that's not destruction, that's deliverance. That's not betrayal. That's beginning. Because what the world won't often tell you is this: evil rarely kicks down doors. It doesn't always shout. No, it wears cologne. It shows up smiling. It whispers, be good, be quiet, be useful. And it doesn't need violence to survive, it just needs your permission. That's why when the supersoul walks, not in rage, then not in revenge but in radiant clarity, that illusion doesn't just crack, it collapses. The whole stage dims. The spotlight shuts off. And the mask, it starts to fall. Sure, the narcissist may keep the act going, they're experts at surfaces, but deep down, where silence lives, something changes. Because the mask, it was never meant to be worn alone. And now, there's no one left to hold it up. That, right there, is when you begin to understand what power really is. Because, walking away, that isn't weakness, that's release. That's you saying with every fiber of your being, your chapter ends here, my story is just beginning. And if you ever find yourself wondering, did it matter? Did walking make any difference at all? Hear me now, it mattered. You didn't need to scream. You didn't need to win a debate. You just had to stop participating in the performance. And in that holy silence, in that sacred refusal to play along, the truth thundered louder than words ever could. You don't conquer the narcissist with conflict. You conquer by no longer needing them. But lean in now, because this next part, this is where the real miracle happens. It's not just about leaving the storm. It's about learning to live where there's no more thunder. When the spin stops, when your soul gets quiet, and at first, that stillness might feel foreign. But stay there. Stay in the hush. Because what rises in that silence is you. Not the you who survived, the you who's becoming. You've walked through psychological fire. You've doubted your own heart. But still, you rose. Still, you chose truth. Still, you choose you. And that choice, that's the axis the rest of your life turns on. Now begins the rebuilding, not of what was, but of what can be. A life where peace is not earned by pleasing. A life where boundaries are not apologies, they're declarations. A life where you can look someone in the eye and say, "This is what I need," and not flinch when you say it. That, my friend, is awakening, not with trumpets, not with fire, but with sacred steadiness. While the narcissist plays in illusions of power, the supersoul steps into real power, not the kind that controls, the kind that chooses. Chooses rest, chooses clarity, chooses to live with nothing to prove. Call it what you will. Psychologists may call it individuation, but I call it resurrection. A rebirth from the ashes of approval, seeking and silent suffering. The caretaker, the overgiver, the fixer, they lay to rest. And from that soil grows someone who no longer trades wholeness for belonging. That's when the true shift happens. The narcissist, they don't feel threatening anymore. Not because you've built walls, but because you've stopped using their mirror to see yourself. You've grown past the need to be chosen. You've chosen yourself. That's not recovery, that's revolution. You begin to speak from power, not pain. You draw new circles. You make room only for those who see you, not just need you. You stop searching for the one who'll finally choose you, because you already did. So if you've walked that valley, if you've prayed through clenched teeth, if you've wept into your pillow wondering if you're crazy or too sensitive or somehow broken, let this word rest on your heart like healing rain. You are not broken. You are becoming. This is not a reaction to pain. It is the creation of a new life. One shaped not by what hurt you, but by what you believe you were always worthy of. Let me end with this. The greatest act of strength is not in what you tear down. It's in what you build from the rubble. And when you choose truth, not just truth for them, but truth that includes you, you don't just survive, you change the world.